Hey everyone, welcome to Talking Sense. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of my favourite fragrances from Xerjoff's Join the Club, and it's Fatal Charme. So for Xerjoff, Fatal Charme, it's a bit of an interesting one because the Join the Club line, it's kind of a little bit hyped but not very much, and I think it's kind of the same with all Xerjoff fragrances in that some of them are super hyped and some of them are completely forgotten about. From the Join the Club line, you seem to get a lot of people talk about More Than Words, and Ivory Root is like probably the main one, and then 40 Knots a little bit but not quite so much. And then things like Fatal Charme, just no one talks about it. I don't think there's even an English review on YouTube of it, which blows my mind. Normally with Xerjoff fragrances, I find that you get a kind of like hype bubble where, because I think probably my theory is that they're quite expensive, people aren't willing to just blind buy them, so you get one or two people talk about how great they are, and then that kind of, the focus is just on those few fragrances. So you get like Richwood, Naxos and Neo and Ivory Root, and then everyone just kind of plays into that, and it turns into a feedback loop, and all the others just kind of fall by the wayside. So yeah, anyway, today I'm going to be talking about someone that's rarely talked about, Fatal Charme, and I've no idea why it's not talked about. It's from 2012. It was made by Chris Maurice. He's made a load of Xerjoff stuff, Alexandria 2 or the second, I'm not sure, Richwood, Alcat, and he's done a load of Suspiro stuff as well. And the note listing for it is kind of weird because the whole Join the Club line is that they didn't release any of the notes, so it was all kind of like a mystery. But the note listing on Fragrantica puts it as aldehydes, orris root, powdery notes, ambergris, spicy notes, tobacco and floral notes. There's a lot of vagueness in there, but still I think it's quite close, but we'll go through it a little bit more. So the Fatal Charme is, with all the Join the Club lines, they all kind of, they're like the, say the 40 Knots is the golfing club, Ivory Roots the adventure club, and this is apparently to do with high fashion. Now I could knock the hell out of that, but as you're going to see, I'm not going to. So let's just give it a spray and see what it smells like. The sprays on all of these old Xerjoff bottles are amazing. The new ones, because obviously they've got newer bottles now, but the sprays on the old ones are amazing. I assume they're just as good on the new ones. Anyway, what does it smell like? So the opening. Now the opening is really interesting, this one. It could be a little bit offensive. It opens with this like, obviously the aldehydes make this kind of like lemony, very lemony, quite ozonic kind of little sharpness to it. And there's also a metallic floral in there that is quite aggressive. And I think people will find that a little bit of a challenge at first. And underneath that, there's a lot of sweetness, a lot of kind of like powdery sweetness from like a kind of iris. But it's that the opening's got this very sharp note. Say the aldehydes are a little sharp, but they're not too bad, and they kick right back in the fragrance quite quickly. But it does have this metallic note, and the metallic note is going to stick with us all the way, and it's a little bit of a challenge. It also has just a snip of sort of animalic kind of barnyard to it, but it's not dirty really. I mean, to call it barnyard is almost wrong, because it's more like the world's most well cared for horse stable or something, you know. It's like but it is a little bit kind of animalic, but it's so gentle, it's almost not worth pointing out, but it is in there, and it took me a couple of wears to kind of get with it. When I first wore it, I thought it was a little bit out of place and a little bit nasty. It took me a couple of wears to like kind of get with it really. But I say it's not it's, you know, in terms of like other animalic fragrances, it's nothing. It's say it's so slight, and even though if you can smell it, it's not offensive. It is very gentle. It's very much like just a touch, and the animalic kind of vibe is so clean and pretty, really, that it's not offensive in any way, really. I say it took me a couple of goes. At first I did find it a bit, wasn't like repulsive, but it was a bit just surprising more than anything. It was a little bit, felt a little bit out of place, but a couple of wears in and I just forgot all that. But that's kind of it, and sounds quite boring maybe, but it opens up, like with a lot of the Join the Club lines, it opens up really quite quickly, and when it starts opening, it really can change quite a lot. Where we are now is you've got a kind of big orris in the middle that's very powdery and soft, and I tell you what, it's so smooth. It's like velvet. It's really velvety, kind of smooth. It's the best ways I can really put it. It's like kind of velvet and silk, you know, you can almost like feel it. It feels like kind of cashmere wool almost. It's really, really like soft, and you can almost feel it, and it's really gorgeous. It's really inviting. And then say on top of that, you've got this just gentle sort of lemon aldehyde that feels a little bit ozonic and a little bit kind of light and airy. And then kind of alongside it, or slightly underneath it, you've got this kind of sharp metallic note, which is quite hard to actually place it for anything specific. To me, it smells a little bit floral. It smells a bit like a rose, like a metallic rose note alongside. But I don't really know where it's coming from. It could, you know, it's a bit of a baffling one. It could be the ambergris, maybe. I don't know. I can't really see it. But that ambergris is very nice as well, because that kind of plays underneath a lot of it, and that sits underneath everything and just gives it this like gentle kind of woody feel. It's not like ambergris in terms of like sea salt or anything like that. It just makes a nice kind of woody resin underneath everything, and that with the orris together makes quite a clump in that middle. You know, it makes quite what could be a really heavy fragrance, but it's not. It's kept okay, but it makes quite that kind of sweet lump in the middle quite thick, because you've got this thick orris that's like quite powdery. At the same time, you've got this kind of thick kind of ambergris that's a little woody, and that they kind of joining together and making this like resinous kind of ambery almost kind of vibe. And it is getting quite, you know, thick really, but it doesn't get cloying at the same time. It doesn't ever feel heavy. I'm quite susceptible to that. I don't really like heavy on top of me fragrances. This is not like that. You can totally pull it off. You've almost got this kind of thick, sort of very expensive vanilla ice cream feel to it as well at the same time, with that sweetness. And it does kind of get borderline, it's up there with some gourmand, you know, for like the kind of thick sweetness that you get with gourmands at this point. But it doesn't feel gourmand at all, but it gets up there with that. So I'm trying, you know, it feels like it's up there with those kind of, the vibes of that level of sweetness, that kind of thickness. But it's, I say, that never gets heavy, so don't be concerned too much about that. And then really that's kind of it for the opening. And I don't have a dry down, but I'm more than comfortable talking about this. So I've worn it quite a bit. So what's going to happen, because it does develop, and it takes a couple of hours to fully change its face, but over those hours, what's going to happen is that lemon aldehydic, that lemon kind of aldehyde vibe is going to sit back quite a bit. It's always going to be there, but it's going to sit right back. And the metallic note is going to kind of pretty much stay where it is. The iris is also going to pretty much stay where it is. But underneath everything, that kind of gentle woods that's there, and that kind of moves up into the fore a little more, and the ambergris kind of takes over from the floral kind of iris, so that maybe the iris and the ambergris kind of start kind of melding a bit more and changing places a little bit in the fragrance. It gets a little bit less powdery, because it is quite powdery at first, but it smells like it works. It kind of gives it that velvet cashmere kind of vibe, but yeah, they're going to kind of change places a little, and then underneath all of that, and really the kind of star at this point, I think, and this is going to kick in at about an hour and it's going to last until the very end, is you're going to get the tobacco that's going to come up underneath. And the tobacco in this is really, really gorgeous. It's a thick, rich, malty kind of feel, like almost like, yeah, like malt, you know. It feels like a malty tobacco, and it's really, really good, and it's sort of melds with everything there. So as you can imagine, you've got this kind of like gently powdery sweet iris, this kind of woodsy ambergris that's just a touch animalic, and then this kind of really nice malty tobacco underneath all of that that's just smooth and soft. It's not sort of brash or harsh, or doesn't smell like a pipe, or, you know, you've walked into a club, like an old man's gentleman club or something. It's none of that. Like, it's properly like just a nice fresh malty tobacco, and it's really gorgeous. And that's kind of where it's going to stay and last with you until the end of the dry down, which unfortunately is only about 5 or 6 hours for me, at which point it becomes quite a close skin scent. You know, I'd prefer it to be a little bit more long lasting, but 5 or 6 hours of projection is good. You know, you can't really worry about that too much. And I feel like the one thing from describing this, and as I'm describing it now, I'm kind of noticing it, is that I feel like I'm oversimplifying this fragrance, and that's kind of the beauty of this fragrance, and kind of leads me on to the kind of more abstract sections of it, I suppose, in that this fragrance feels very, very chic. And I hate to use that word because these days chic is so overused that it's kind of lost its original meaning, but it really is. It's like, it really does feel chic in the original meaning, you know. It feels very, very haute couture, you know. It's super chic, and say like in the original meaning, in sense of like, you know, these days chic is like a bunch of people sitting around in a bunch of CEOs sitting around in a high street boardroom talking about what's going to be fashionable this spring, and then just slapping the word chic on it. That's so far from the original idea of like kind of effortless style, but that's what this really feels like. It's kind of like high fashion, effortless style, and I really get it. And that's kind of, I say, when you kind of get the kind of, oh, the Xerjoff join the club, this one's about fashion, and you just kind of roll your eyes a bit, right? I'm not like immune to marketing, but it's most kind of briefs for perfumes are a little bit kind of tacky and pretentious. Like, you know, with Ivory Root, you've got like the Adventure Club. Well, there's not a lot that feels adventure to Ivory Root to me. And then, you know, most of the Join the Club lineup, I kind of just feel like, what? But with this one, I actually get it. I really do think it is very chic, very haute couture. It feels really, really deceptive in that it's so simple. You know, it has this simple charm, like a simple allure, that's velvety, sexy, soft, sweet. You know, people are going to like that, right? But then when you actually kind of sniff it, it's like, hang on, there's a lot more going on here. This is a lot more challenging than it's letting on. You know, with that kind of metallic note and the kind of animalic and the woody kind of vibe, and then this kind of malty tobacco underneath. There's plenty of depth to this fragrance. But on the surface, when you just kind of catch a whiff of it here and there, smells very like, oh, it's quite simple, you know. It's really attractive, but very simple. But it's not. It's deceptively so. And I really, really like that about it. And I think it also, with the name as well, like Fatal Charm, I feel like I get that with it, because it's smooth, it's sweet, it's sexy, it draws you in, and it makes you want to sniff it. And you think, yeah, that smells great, but then when you sniff it, it's like, Jesus, what's under there? There's some danger in there. There's like that metallic note and the ambergris. It's like, yeah, like snake charmer, come with me. Oh, by the way, now we're gonna fucking kill you. Like, it's just got this kind of dangerous edge to it that just gives it a kind of, I don't know, something really interesting and intriguing and mysterious. And I think this is a beautiful fragrance, frankly. The one thing I will say, it makes me feel like I'm not cool enough to wear it constantly. Because we'll talk a bit about that. So who's it for? So I would say it's unisex, but it leans feminine, definitely leans feminine. But then it swings back later when the tobacco comes in and it gets a bit maltier. So, but I do think it's more leaning to the feminine than the masculine. But really, it's pretty down the line unisex. I think anyone can wear it anytime. Weather-wise, I think anytime. I think you can pull this off. Again, like I'd sort of say it every video, I probably wouldn't wear it in the heat of summer. That's me personally. I still don't think this would really work in the heat of summer, but perhaps summer evenings, totally fine. Say, because it gets very sweet, but it never gets too heavy, and those floral notes are going to work in the summer, to be honest. So I think anytime, but it has that kind of sweet, sort of woody spiciness, because there's some spice in this. You don't really get it from the start, it comes later, but there's some spice in this, and when it comes, it's very hot. It's quite like, almost like a chili, but it's very subtle, and it's right at the back. But it's there, so in the winter, it's that's gonna help. I think just about 4 seasons. Like, I think you could wear this at any point. In terms of who it's for, like, it's an interesting one, because I feel like the images I get from this are the only people that can really pull this off. I mean, of course, anyone can wear anything. Like, you can wear this in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, no problem, who cares, right? But when you've got like a massive wardrobe of perfumes, I personally kind of enjoy the game of trying to match like a perfume to my outfit and all that kind of stuff, right? But for me, it feels like this fragrance, you can only really wear it if you're really, really, really cool. Like, you have to be the kind of person that is going to get stopped on the street and have your photo taken for street fashion or something like that, or either that or like a seriously fashionable, elegant, older like lady would pull this off, absolutely nail it. But of course, this is in like perfect. I think it would fit those people perfectly, but I think it fits everyone else just as well. Like, I'm wearing it today, and I'm wearing like a scabby old jumper, scabby old cardi, a pair of jeans with a massive hole in. So, like, whatever really, you can dress it down. But if I was to be like perfect, I would want to wear this like dressed in some like absolute top class, super high fashion, really stylish gear. But to be honest, I rarely dress that cool. I'm just not that cool, so it does make me feel a little bit uncool. But it's just a beautiful fragrance, and I think that's who it kind of would fit perfectly. But otherwise, I think it's for everyone. I think it's criminally overlooked. I think in terms of like, you hear a lot of talk about Ivory Root, right? I think this is a better fragrance, and that's, I'm not slamming Ivory Root in any way, because I love Ivory Root. It's one of my top fragrances, and that's just to say how much I enjoy this one, and I don't understand why it's not talked about more, because I think it's more interesting, and I think it's slightly more adventurous, and I think it's definitely more artistic than Ivory Root. But it just doesn't get talked about, which is fine, because I got it really cheap. So, the less people that buy it, the cheaper it is for all of us. But to sum it up, really, like, it's quite basic. It opens with this kind of sweet, velvet, silky, powdery iris, with like some kind of nondescript kind of florals in there, which are quite hard to kind of understand, but they're not really like photos, realistic florals. It's more kind of mixes down with that iris. You get this kind of sharp metallic, kind of almost like a rose, I feel, but it might not be. kind of alongside that. They're kind of lemony aldehydes on top of it, and underneath it just a touch of woods and spice, and that's going to develop and turn into a very nice warm, rich, sweet, silky iris and tobacco that kind of has that malty vibe. And that's kind of it, really. That's kind of the fragrance. I don't know if that sounds boring. It's certainly not. It's really one of the most gorgeously sweet and beautiful fragrances I own. It's definitely one of the favourite fragrances I own. And I think it's just really nice. I think it has just enough adventure and artistic kind of excitement to make it a really great, interesting fragrance for people who are into fragrances, but at the same time fairly mass appealing for just about everyone. I can't see many people sort of saying like, oh, you smell bad. Definitely, I just can't see that with this fragrance. It's too soft and alluring and sensual, and there's just no reason to not like it, really. So if you get up close, it does have that little animalic vibe, but it's so slight and it's so clean that it's really fine. So yeah, Xerjoff, join the club. Fatal Charme, beautiful fragrance. If you can find it cheap, even better. It's just a gorgeous fragrance, and I recommend it fully for just about anyone. If you like sweet stuff, I definitely recommend it. If you like gourmand, I definitely recommend it. Anyone who's looking for something along the lines of maybe like a kind of date fragrance, or something to replace Dior Homme Intense or La Nuit, things like that. Like if you want to step the game up, definitely recommend it, because I think it can kind of take that kind of position. Same time, I just think it's like flawless for just about anything. It's just a gorgeous fragrance. If you're super cool, even more so, this will just nail your outfit. So yeah, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, chuck it in the comments, things like that. YouTube things, I don't really know. Thanks for watching. Cheers.